Now, our next topic of discussion is the while loop in Java. So inside the IntelliJ IDE, let us remove all these code that belongs to the for loop. And first of all, let us now check out the while loop syntax and also one basic example. Now the syntax of while loop is very simple. You just need to type while keyword followed by bracket open and close, and within this we need to write our condition and then our code within the block. So before the while loop, we need to have our counter variable like we had in case of for loop. And within this, we need to write our code and also increment or decrement our counter variable. Now let us write a very simple program to print out the natural numbers till 10, that is including 0, 1, 2, 3 till 10. So for that again we are having some pattern. We are incrementing the counter variable from 0 till 10, right? So in that case again we need to use loop. We can also use for loop, but here I am using while loop just to explain you the syntax and basics of while loop. So here instead of counter variable, let us use our variable name as, let's say, int count equal to 0. And here within the condition, since our last number is 10, so let us use, let's say, while count variable is smaller than equal to 10, right? Because we want the variable of count never exceed 10 because our upper limit is 10, right? And then our code. Now our code will be simple print statement. So simply print out the count variable. Now instead of this comment, let us use our code of count plus plus. That will increment our counter variable by 1 each time we iterate through our loop. Let us now run the code and let's see what happens. So there we go, in our output we have 0, 1, 2 till 10, right? So when we run the code, what happens is that it simply initializes our counter variable as 0 and then check for the condition. If the condition is true, then only execute the code. Now each time we iterate through, the value of counter variable increases by 1. Now as soon as it becomes, let's say, 11, then our condition becomes false and we no longer execute this statement. So that is why we get 10 as the last output. And now this was about the basics of while loop and syntax. Let us move a step ahead and let us write a program related to the while loop. Now suppose if I give you a task to write a program to find out the factorial of a number. Now what does a factorial of a number means? Now if I ask you to find out the factorial of 5, then you need to do something like this. 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1 till you reach 1, multiply all the numbers, and then whatever output you will get will be your result. Similarly, if I ask you to find out the factorial of, let's say, 6, then you will add 6 into 5 into 4 and so on till you reach 1. Fine, let us now revert it back to 5. So here again we are having some pattern. So let us follow the pattern and write our code using the while loop. So first of all, we need a counter variable like we have here. Now this time our counter variable will start from 5 and then progressively decrement towards 1, right? So here let us use int. This time let us use a variable of num equal to 5. And now let us write our while loop syntax. If the number, and here our upper limit is 1. Now make a note, you have to make sure that this number never becomes 0. So for that purpose, let us use a condition of if num is greater than 0. So this is our condition that has to be true for our code to be executed. So let us write our code. Now to find a factorial of a number, we need to store the result each time we iterate through the loop. So for that again, I have to define one more variable. So this time let us use long factorial. Let us initialize it to 1 initially. Now why we are using long? Because long is an integer data type that can store a very large number, right? So our result can be about, let's say, 120000 or something, a very huge integer number, right? So we are not sure about that. So to be on the safe side, I am using the long data type so as to avoid any error. Now, inside the code block, I have to use, let's say, factorial equal to factorial into num. Now what I'm doing here is I will come to this later. Now here let us continue our coding. So here I have to either increment or decrement my counter variable. In my case the counter is number, right? So here I will use num minus minus, because if you notice here our counter in our case is getting decremented and reaching towards 1. So that is why I am using number minus minus. So how our code is going to work? When this statement will be executed for the first time, this will be equivalent to, let's say, factorial equal to, this factorial variable has a value of 1 and then I have number value as 5. So the factorial will have the value of 5. Now remember our factorial is currently 5. Now the second time when this loop runs, this factorial instead of 1 is actually 5, right? And this number is actually, let's say, 4, because number minus minus is actually 4. So after the second iteration the value becomes 20. Now at the third iteration the factorial value is initially 20. So 20 into number minus minus becomes 3. So here we will have 3. So here we will get 60 in the output. So similarly the iteration will continue and finally we will get 120 in the output console. So at the end, let us use the print statement. Factorial is, let us print out our factorial variable. Let us run the code. So here at the end we have the output as factorial is, so we are getting our desired output. And now let us rectify our code. If you remember from the topic of operators in Java, we can simplify this code by simply using the alternative statement. Let's say factorial asterisk equal to num. So these two statements are basically same. So always try to use operators wherever possible. If you run the code right now, the output will be same. There we go, factorial is 120. So I hope now you are clear with what is while loop in Java. So this was all about the while loop in Java.